Several months later.
I left you guys hanging. I'm sorry about that. It's been a couple months. I'm back. It's part 3. Thanks for waiting. Are you guys ready? This is some test footage that was commissioned between 1981 and 1983. It shows some early tests of Jessica flirting with Eddie Valiant, along with some animation tests of Roger Rabbit, voiced by Paul Rubens.
Act like a human. You understand?
Oh, yes, sir. But wouldn't it be more helpful if I started to come along with you? Because what if maybe you gotta get into some more locks or something? Okay.
You can see that Roger's speech impediment was an early idea. And to be honest, I think I might prefer Paul Rubens' take on Roger over Fleischer's. I like the way Roger is animated here and would have liked to see more of that annoyed attitude shown from Roger in this test. One of the pictures in Roger's wallet shows Jessica and Roger at the Brown Derby with caricatures of various people in the background. And there's Stevie! Roger Rabbit and the Secrets of Toontown was a television special aired on CBS in 1988 that included a behind-the-scenes look at the making of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's not a substantial documentary, and they weirdly have Roger interact with the host, but they reuse his animations from the movie, so it looks really awkward and lazy. This special was never released on home video and was replaced by another behind-the-scenes doc to be included in the DVD release. Speaking of television specials, in November 1988, NBC aired Mickey's 60th birthday, an hour-long special celebrating Mickey's 60th anniversary. I'm pretty sure no one really remembers this special. It ends up being a typical showcase for various intellectual properties, including Roger Rabbit. In fact, Roger ends up being a substantial role in this special. Roger acts stupider than usual, and the animation is just not up to par compared to the movie. There is this cute scene of Roger and his voice actor Charles Fleischer here, though, but besides that, this is not a memorable piece of media. Just a weird cameo from Roger in an episode of Tiny Toons. Here he is seen in a weird yellow sweatsuit, and the voice actor doesn't even come close to Charles Fleischer's voice.
Look, I'm wacky, zany, toony, yeah!
We're auditioning new characters for the show.
Did you know they made a graphic novel sequel to Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Yeah, it's called Roger Rabbit: The Resurrection of Doom, and it kinda sucks. Basically, the graphic novel takes place shortly after the events of Who Framed Roger Rabbit and focuses most of the story on Judge Doom's backstory and resurrection. All of the Doom backstory is pretty lame, while Valiant, Roger, and Jessica and company are mostly left on the bench. I'd say the best part of the Resurrection of Doom is a brief scene where Roger is forced to limit his animation for a Hanna-Barbera-like cartoon. They even have a Hong Kong Phooey parody in it. Also, Resurrection of Doom is very short for a graphic novel, as they padded the book out with a comic version of Tummy Trouble, which... why? Anyways, Resurrection of Doom is supposedly the only true canon sequel that there has been to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and it's mostly completely forgotten. Speaking of comic books, there was also a Roger Rabbit comic series by the short-lived Disney Comics Publishing Company. From 1990 to 1993, Disney Comics produced 18 Roger Rabbit comics along with several other Toontown and 3D comic spin-offs. I actually collected all of them in high school. Unlike Resurrection of Doom, I actually think these comics are really good. They are a direct sequel to Resurrection of Doom, so there are a few references to that, but basically Eddie Valiant has been replaced by Rick Flint, who is inconsequential. He's just kind of there. What makes the comic series much better, in my opinion, is the focus on Toontown and the various animated characters and ideas from the movie. My favorite comics were actually the shorts that were often only a few pages long, but better captured the advantages of the comic medium than anything from Resurrection of Doom. Roger's character is also way more developed in the comics than the movies. He's much less childlike and more frustrated and logical than his movie version. You can also see the humor in the comic shift towards the early 90s attitude seen in Animaniacs and Tiny Toons, which just again makes me bummed that we never got a Roger Rabbit TV show. So yeah, I'm not quite sure where I'm going to go with this one. I guess it stems from that Red Letter Media Star Wars review where Mike compares Jar Jar Binks to an alien Roger Rabbit or something. I'm pretty sure Roger Ebert also compared Jar Jar to Roger way back when he reviewed Phantom Menace in '99. I think the reason I put this one in is because the comparison is pretty damning. Between the voice, clumsiness, ears, and the speech impediment, it's hard to imagine Lucas wasn't at least a little inspired by Roger, or at least the comic sidekick trope he was portraying. I don't know. So why is Jar Jar hated so much more? Well, for starters, Roger is in a movie named after him, so we know he's going to be in it. We expect him to be annoying and childlike. Meanwhile, Jar Jar was thrown into a beloved sci-fi franchise with hella outside lore with absolutely no warning. So the vitriol for Jar Jar is kind of understandable. But is Roger really any better or less annoying than Jar Jar Binks? Yes, Roger's way better. What are we even talking about? Jar Jar makes poo-poo pee-pee jokes while Roger low-key calls Eddie an alcoholic. I guess the reason I put this one in here is because the character of Roger Rabbit is like my favorite part of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Even though he's not really fleshed out all that much, sure, he's broadly written as a clown whose only purpose seems to be a foil to the straight-faced Eddie, but I see something deeper, something much more video essay-y. I'm almost certain everyone would agree Roger is just more likable and funnier than Jar Jar Binks. But what makes the comparison a little unfair in my opinion is the damage that Roger sustains throughout the movie. That's right. Damage is one of the major motifs I take away from the Roger Rabbit cinematic universe. Let's set aside the fact that the first 7 minutes of the movie is Roger getting absolutely wrecked. The first act is about emotionally damaging Roger to the point where it's believable he would commit murder. Meanwhile, we're introduced to a substance that can literally melt away characters in seconds, a beloved form of transportation being dismantled, and Toontown is about to be dipped away. Also, the way Roger is treated on set would make Ellen DeGeneres cringe. Now, Golden Age animation often focused on absurd hyperviolence because, fuck it, it's a cartoon, you can do whatever you want with no consequences. It's basically an escapist thrill. The opening short and 3 other Roger Rabbit shorts are frankly some of the most violent, family-friendly cartoons this side of Ren and Stimpy. However, noir stories are usually hyper-serious, emotional, deeply personal. Who Framed Roger Rabbit mixes the two to obvious comic effect. This movie is essentially a spoof of Chinatown after all, but also ends up mandating an interesting set of rules that aren't fully explained out in the movie. We know that Toons can't be killed without dip, but can be hurt by breaking their heart. But it's pretty obvious Roger can feel pain. You can argue he's acting in the shorts by exaggerating his screams of absolute agony, but he also screams in pain when Eddie lifts him by the ears, gets full-on knocked out by a frying pan, and incapacitated by a pile of bricks. What the hell are the rules here? So why does this all matter? I don't know. I just think about it a lot. Roger Rabbit's better than Jar Jar. I don't really know where I was going with this one. Alright, who's ready for a 30-minute dissertation about how Jessica Rabbit subverts the femme fatale archetype and in turn validates both societal gender roles and bestiality? Just kidding. This entry is just about an earlier draft of Who Framed Roger Rabbit that ended with Jessica being the one who frames Roger. Not much is known about this draft, or at least I didn't find any info on it besides a few mentions in an interview or two. Keep in mind, the script went through many different rewrites and endings, such as... Again, I have no idea how Baby Herman ends up framing Roger Rabbit, but just about every character in the movie had a draft where they ended up framing this poor rabbit. Who Plugged Roger Rabbit is the follow-up to Who Censored Roger Rabbit, written by Gary K. Wolfe. This book came out after the movie, so Gary simply retconned the entire first novel and used the characters from the movie instead. I've only read a few pages of this, and I didn't want to read anymore. So apparently it's a spin-off of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, not a prequel nor a sequel. It's not canon. Really the only thing of note is that Baby Herman gets murdered. Yeah. Speaking of our friend Gary. Oh, Gary. Let's talk about the man who started it all for a bit, shall we? Gary K. Wolfe owns one of the largest collections of carousel horses in the world. He and his wife of 50 years live with their cats in Boston, Massachusetts. He also successfully sued Disney from anywhere to $180,000 to $400,000. Gary first filed a lawsuit against the Walt Disney Company, claiming he was owed royalties based on the value of gross receipts and merchandise for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. A 2002 trial court denied Wolfe's claim, with a big objector in the case being the word purchaser and whether it applied to Disney's subsidiaries. But California Court of Appeals disagreed, finding that gross receipts in the entertainment business could support a broader reading of the term. That ruling vacated the decision to further proceedings, and in March 2005, Wolfe estimated he was owed $7 million. However, not only did Disney attorneys say, no, we don't owe you that, they actually pulled the, you actually owe us $500,000 because of an accountant fee that we discovered while preparing the lawsuit. Disney, does your evil know no bounds? Thankfully, Gary K. Wolfe won the decision on July 2005, winning between $180,000 and $400,000, a long way off from the $7 million he was asking for. But hey, you took on Goliath and won, Gary! But let's be real though. Looking at all the Roger Rabbit merchandise sold in the early 90s, $7 million is not out of the question at all in terms of an estimation by Gary. Good for him for going for it even after the Disney lawyers tried to bully him. Eight years later, rumors come out that Gary K. Wolfe had pitched Disney a remake of 1952's The Stooge, starring Mickey Mouse and Roger Rabbit playing the roles of Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin.
What the fuck?
In reality, this rumor stemmed from a blog post ghostwritten by Gary K. Wolfe, but the post did include some concept art that looks, creepy. It just looks creepy. Very little has been said about this Stooge remake, and according to an interview with Ain't It Cool News, it's pretty obvious this was just a stunt to promote his new book. Yep, Gary wrote another Roger Rabbit book, and it came out in 2013. No, I have not read it yet. This is the cover. Yes, that's Gary K. Wolfe. Check out this test footage from 1998 featuring a CGI Roger Rabbit.
So what do you think, big fella?
Dear God. It could be worse, but the point is, this is what Roger was going to look like in the sequel. So, honestly, probably a good thing it didn't happen. Just a little Easter egg in Toontown. Read the newspaper and the headline says, Bob Z has a winner, obviously referring to the director Robert Zemeckis. After knowing what we know about the production, this was probably put in sarcastically. One of the most low-key creepy images in the movie, in my opinion, is this poster in Toontown for Porky's all-beef sausage. I don't know. The idea of a pig salivating over some sausage is disturbing. And even if they are all beef, which, of course, thank you, Ted, that was the joke, lots of creepy background details in Toontown. One of the most out-of-left-field scenes in the movie is during the finale when Eddie pulls out a singing sword to fight Judge Doom. It's a funny gag in which the audience just assumes it's typical Toon goofiness, but have you actually seen this character in any cartoons before? No, you haven't, because this is a comic strip joke, and a very esoteric one at that. Prince Valiant is an English comic strip started in 1937. It's often credited with helping establish comics as a legitimate and respected medium for storytelling. In the comic, Prince Valiant fights the Huns with his magical singing sword. So yeah, Eddie Valiant plus a singing sword equals mega obscure reference to a 1930s comic strip. Cut! That is producer Joel Silver appearing on screen as director Raoul J. Raoul. This cameo is a prank by Spielberg on Eisner. You see, Eisner hated Joel Silver's guts at the time. Silver and Eisner despised each other since their days at Paramount Pictures in the early 80s, especially with the issues they faced making 48 Hours. Silver trimmed his beard off, paid his own expenses, and asked not to have his name in the initial cast lists. Reportedly, when production wrapped, due to the fact that Silver was unrecognizable, Eisner questioned who played Raoul, and when told it was Silver, he just shrugged and praised his performance. This one is super hard to see, but select frames of the car chase sequence, you can see Eddie Valiant is drawn as a cartoon. Spooky, ain't it? Jessica Rabbit went through many different designs before they decided with the super voluptuous version we know and love today. Where Are They Now is a short animation by Steve Cutts released in 2014. The short catches up with what Roger and Jessica are up to nowadays, which is apparently being depressing. Jessica has become obese while Roger only cares about soccer for some reason. Oh, and they all have British male accents.
Lazy bastard. It's not easy. I've had a tough time with my hormone replacement therapy as of late.
It's a very odd sketch that I still find pretty amusing, if not downright nightmare-inducing.
Just kill me.
Another secret hidden in the frames of this movie is when the dip machine gets hit by the train while crossing into Toontown. In the windows of the train are scenes of murder and scandal.
Roger, darling, I want you to know I love you. I've loved you more than any woman's ever loved a rabbit.
Vibrator joke. Another blatant breaking of the rules here is when the weasels start dying from laughter. Throughout the movie, one of the major messages is that laughter is the only weapon the Toons really have. And while this message really resonated with me when I was younger, now when I watch this movie, I realize how flimsy this whole conceit really is. You said Toons couldn't be killed, movie. You said only Dip can kill Toons, movie. However, these Toons are dying because of jokes? Well, which is it, movie? Do you think I'm a joke? Is heaven even real? So yeah, this whole part doesn't really make any sense, and Eddie doing clown stuff always cringes me out just a little bit. But notice that the weasels who die of laughter turn into angels and float into the sky. Okay, fine, movie, I'll give you that one. Toon Heaven is an extremely common trope in animation. But what about the leader of the weasels? While the weasels are never actually named, the one that talks the most is named Smartass, and he meets his end when he's kicked in the balls and knocked into a vat full of dip. No angel appears from the dip.
And in the role of a lifetime, Gary Oldman.
When Roger and Eddie are about to infiltrate Maroon Cartoons, Roger says the line, "might try to kill us," and tiptoes against a wall. While this may just seem like a weird bit of character animation, it is actually meant to disguise the fact that Bob Hoskins' eye line was too high up, so they stretched Roger taller to match it. Ever notice how bouncy Jessica boobs are? Of course you have. That's because the animators purposefully animated them incorrectly. You may be thinking, oh, that's bullcrap, Zach. You don't know what you're talking about. And to that, I say, you are absolutely correct. I just read this on an animator's blog once, and I can't even find that link anymore, so just ignore this entry. Thanks, bye. More proof that British silliness can cost thousands of dollars. The chili bottle that Roger drinks out of in the opening short was originally spelled with 2 L's, because that's how British people spell it. Hundreds of frames had to be reanimated to remove that extra L. Talk about taking a major L. The shooting location for Maroon Studios still exists and looks relatively the same. The studio is located in Hollywood and is owned by Red Digital Cameras. Formerly known as Renmar Studios, this location still operates today as an actual film studio. Another location from the movie that you can still visit today is the bridge Roger, Eddie, and Benny almost run into during the car chase scene. This is the Glendale Hyperion Bridge, and its significance ties with the Pacific Electric Railway, the red car seen throughout the movie. Although it only appears for a few seconds, it's neat to see them tie in the real-world influences directly to the location it actually happened. Another one of the creepiest scenes in the movie is when Judge Doom gets run over by a steamroller. Just absolutely horrifying and gruesome. They even go as far as show him flattened on the ground afterwards. He then springs up to life through this terrifying stop-motion animation and reveals he was a Toon all along. While lots of great foreshadowing led up to this moment, it doesn't quite excuse the fact that the flattened Judge Doom model is possibly the scariest part of this movie. While a full-scaled human-sized model is on display at ILM's office, Robert Zemeckis still has a model of the stop-motion flattened Judge Doom sitting on his desk. Judge Doom was supposed to own a vulture that sat on his shoulder. His name was Voltaire, and he was supposed to be one of the vultures from Snow White. However, Voltaire the Vulture was dropped in favor of saving time. Voltaire did resurface as part of a Judge Doom action figure set. During the scene where Eddie walks through Maroon Studios, we see a pelican mailman riding a bike before falling off screen. As you can see, the bike he's riding is a real-life bike. The film crew had to rig the bike to stand up and ride through the studio, but it ended up being harder than it looked to keep the bike standing. As a result, the animators decided to have the pelican wobble and crash in order to match the bike's movements. The Kangaroo Scene is a deleted scene that takes place in the bar when Judge Doom catches Roger. While wringing Roger's neck and holding him over a barrel of dip, one of the bar patrons protests, saying Roger should be given a fair trial. Judge Doom responds by opening a briefcase full of little kangaroos who instantly vote him guilty. A cute little play on the kangaroo court phrase, but also matches a lot of Jim Crow era laws that people of color faced at the time. During the Toontown scene when Jessica saves Eddie from being shot by Judge Doom is seen running away. This is not actually Christopher Lloyd in this shot, but instead visual effects supervisor Ken Ralston. All the Toontown scenes were shot in LA months after original filming in England, so Christopher Lloyd was unavailable for the scene. Now this is one that I wish took off the ground a little more. Shortly after the movie came out and before the comic book series started, Disney's in-house comic strip division had been working on a Roger Rabbit series to be released in the comics section of newspapers. A few of these comics have been unearthed and they combine live-action photography with Roger's Toon World. Unfortunately, syndicates passed on Roger, which is a real shame because these comics seemed fun and would have focused on the process of creating cartoons in his world as opposed to the detective angle the comic series ended up prioritizing. It's a shame. I want more of these. A character that looks suspiciously like Roger appears in the crowd of 1987 Sport Goofy and Soccermania. The special aired on NBC in May 27, 1987, over a year before Who Framed Roger Rabbit was released. Might just be a coincidence, though. Well, this is it, guys. It finally happened. This is the one that broke me. We're too far deep. There's no going back. We'll never breathe fresh air ever again. Why have we sunk to such depths? For a good chunk of production, Who Framed Roger Rabbit ended with Roger Rabbit getting shot, dying, and the song The Lazarus Heart playing over his tragic death. Again, very little information is known about this draft, but the Wikipedia page for Sting's album Nothing Like the Sun, which features a Lazarus Heart, says, "The Lazarus Heart was originally written by Sting as the musical finale of the 1988 film Who Framed Roger Rabbit in an early draft in which the novel Who Censored Roger Rabbit's tragic ending where Roger is killed in the crossfire in the final duel was still in the script. When Disney ordered its default ending where Roger is still alive in the final duel to be used, the song got deleted and ended up on Sting's album instead." That's right, they were going to go with the tragic ending where the cute bunny is shot and dies despite being in a universe where it is established that Toons can only die through dip, and played Sting's Lazarus Heart over it. I know you probably don't even know what that song sounds like, and I'm not going to play it because of copyright reasons, but go ahead and open a new tab and just listen to it for a bit. Like, go ahead. It'll only take you about 15 seconds to understand. Go ahead. I'll give you some time. So yeah, now you know why I'm bugging about this. Does that song sound like it belongs anywhere near this movie? What the hell would this movie be if they just dropped that banger at the end of this straight-faced noir that has included nothing but Alan Silvestri's jazz big band music? Obviously, it's good that Disney told them to keep Roger alive, but the fact that this was the ending for a significant part of production is more evidence of how much of a mess they had making it. There were a few scenes in the movie that were storyboarded but never filmed. One of the most notorious scenes that never made the movie was Marvin Acme's funeral, where all of Toontown's Toons come together to mourn the murder of Marvin Acme. The scene actually has importance on the mystery plot, as we see Jessica Rabbit and R.K. Maroon argue during the funeral as Eddie's spies. It's not surprising the scene never made it to cut. First off, it was going to be incredibly hard to film, as it would have nearly the most amount of cartoon characters in the entire movie. And more importantly, it was dark. The image of Goofy, Popeye, Felix the Cat, and Jerry Mouse being pallbearers, while Goofy's cracking jokes like he's Lenny from Grapes of Wrath, is just downright sad. And Foghorn Leghorn gives a eulogy which says, "Today we commit the body of Brother Acme to the cold, I say cold, cold ground. We shed no tears, for we know that Marvin is going to a better place. That high, I say that hilarious place up in the sky. We say goodbye to a man who is more generous than a homely widow with Sunday supper. Why, when Toonkind splattered forth upon this landscape, we wandered the hills without a home. That is until Brother Acme painted up his backyard for us to live in, thereby creating the old neighborhood we know as Toontown." Despite Foghorn's vernacular sloppily doing its best to lighten up the scene, it would have actually paced the movie a little better. Happening shortly after Eddie investigates the crime scene and giving us a little more backstory that the movie is quietly missing. I almost wish this one made it in. Here's a rare shot during the production of the third Roger Rabbit short, Trail Mix-Up. At the end of the short, Roger and crew end up destroying Mount Rushmore, which is a good thing, and I like that Roger is so woke. Right before hitting the monument, there is a single shot of the presidents on Mount Rushmore screaming before being obliterated. This was a practical effect, and they actually molded a fake cartoon Mount Rushmore to pull this shot off. The result is this. Anyone who is even slightly interested in cartoons and animation has probably heard of Chuck Jones. Considered one of the most admired animators of all time, Jones directed classic Looney Tunes such as What's Opera Doc, Roadrunner and Coyote, and countless others. He was even credited in the movie as an animation consultant, basically just for being Chuck Jones. However, Chuck Jones disavowed Who Framed Roger Rabbit and absolutely hated it. But why did he hate it? Well, the reasons are kind of weird. The man just simply hated Roger. Yeah, Chuck Jones hated the character Roger Rabbit. Just didn't like the way he looked. He's just plain ugly. He's not cuddly, said Jones. Roger Rabbit, after all the wonders of putting live action and animation together, presented the case for a very unpleasant character. Roger was not appealing in any way. Could anybody believe that this guy was married to that dame? Mainly, this guy was frenetic and they were trying to imitate Bob Clampett. Zemeckis believes that Clampett pictures were the best ever done at Warner Brothers, so he demanded that this be done that way. And Richard Williams, to his shame, because he's a marvelous animator, decided he was Bob Zemeckis' pencil. So yeah, Chuck Jones actually comes off kind of petty, but he does bring up a solid criticism of this movie. Roger Rabbit is not given enough focus in his own movie. It's Eddie's story first, and Roger is very secondary. It's a short movie and would have served well with explaining Roger's backstory a little better. Maybe show a few more scenes with him and Jessica, or better yet, show snippets of his previous Baby Herman shorts. Bottom line is Roger gets the shaft in terms of character development over most of the human characters, and that is frustrating. However, Chuck Jones and other animators such as Creepy John K. always seem to focus their ire on the way Roger looks, which is odd that they have such a problem with Roger's aesthetic and dismiss the fact that Roger is treated like crap throughout the movie. One of the oddest scenes in the movie, in my opinion, is the shave and the haircut bit that Doom uses to get Roger out of hiding at the bar. I mean, it's such an old-timey joke that you don't really know what's going on until it happens, and you usually come away thinking, what did he say? Two bits? We've established that Toons are often forced to do things in the name of humor, as seen in the handcuff scene. But here we see the physical reaction of a Toon being forced to comply. The system is simply set up against him. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is an allegory for segregation and gentrification during 1940s America, and there's plenty of videos that cover this theory pretty well. One of the reasons I love this movie so much is because it hits that allegory extremely well, like almost by accident. Toons are having their neighborhood they're basically forced to live in on the verge of destruction for a freaking highway is a way better metaphor than suggesting that minorities are super predators. The way Toons are treated like crap and ostracized yet beloved for their entertainment is actually very reminiscent to how people treated black entertainers during that time. So is a shave and a haircut Roger Rabbit's sunken place? Discuss in the comments below. We end this iceberg with the most disturbing scene in the movie, the shoe dip. First off, the voice of the shoe is Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson, and this scene is considered one of the most disturbing scenes in a family movie. The shoe didn't even do anything wrong. The scene could have been even sadder, as the shoe was originally written to be a talking gopher. Thank God it was switched to a non-speaking shoe. Can you imagine a gopher screaming in pain as he melts away? Congrats on making it to the end, guys. I'm sorry for the big break in the between part 2 and 3, but it happens. I hope you found this all as interesting as I did. I truly love this movie, and I'm still hoping for some sort of sequel. I adore the world this movie's created, And I hope Disney Plus or someone releases some more shorts, maybe, or just digs back somewhere into the Roger Rabbit universe soon. Just don't remake it in CGI. I think we're smarter than that. So, thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing. I stream every day on Twitch, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'd love to see you around. We're not going to be doing like a weekly schedule here on YouTube, obviously. But I will try to make some more videos. I think my next one, I'm thinking of making a 2-hour-long video essay on why I think The Ring is the best remake of a foreign film. Let me know if that's something that sounds interesting. Until then, just catch me every night on Twitch, 8 p.m. Love you guys. You are the best for watching all of this. Champions!